selling Iran's provided weapons to Al Qaeda in Yemen?
I mean, this is what militias do. This is what militias outside the control of the state does. They try to gain money by any means necessary when they need it.
Even Al Qaeda.
Even Al Qaeda. This it doesn't matter anymore who you sell weapons to. This is what militias do, and this is what would you expect from someone like Al Houthi? I mean, he caused the destruction of Yemen because of political ambitions that he could have achieved by engaging in a peaceful political process. No one was blocking him from doing this. However, he wanted to do this by violence, and he thought that he could do that. So you would expect him to. I mean, this wouldn't be a big thing. I mean, selling to Al Qaeda, yes, they would do it. The Iranians had some of Al Qaeda members in Iran for a long time. It's not something that should be shocking or new. The Houthi will do more than that to stay in power and to control and to continue what this chaotic situation that he benefits from.
That's great. Mr. Hisham, before we move any further with our discussions, we would like to have this report, dear viewers, and we'll be right back. Welcome back, dear viewers. We are going to continue our discussion with our distinguished guest here in the studio, with Mr. Hisham Al Ghannam, the political analyst. Mr. Hisham, now we are going to actually have Donald Trump, President of the United States, as a guest here in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, and also holding 3 summits, one with the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and the other one with the GCC countries and also Islamic and Arab countries. How do you perceive the importance of this visit, especially when it comes to the crisis of Yemen and other Arab countries?
Definitely, this visit have a very, without exaggerating, a very high symbolic value, and especially at this time, the Saudis have, and I do not want to repeat what have been said several times this week, but the Saudis do have great expectations from this visit. As the Americans have the same expectations, they do have also expectations, but the 2 states have 2 different priorities or agendas here in this matter. For the U.S., it's a chance to speak with the Muslim world and to correct what may have conflicted this relationship between this presidency, this U.S. presidency, and the Muslim world. For the Saudis, it's the Saudis would like to see a more comprehensive and a very clear U.S. policy towards the region, because until now this is not quite clear at this moment, and the Saudis would want to see this, a very clear policy and an approach toward Iran's threat and the region, and secondly towards a U.S. policy, a clear policy towards these non-state actors and militias that Iran supports across the region, whether this happening in the Fertile Crescent, Al Khasib, or it's happening in Yemen. I mean, Houthi as a prime example. The Saudis would want to see a very systematic and rational U.S. policy, especially with this. I do think that this current presidency do have these thoughts and do have these agreements with the Saudis on the Iranian threat. Yes, they do view terrorism represented by ISIS or ISIL as a more imminent threat to the U.S. However, I think these different views between the Saudis and the U.S. is coming to an agreement as days goes on, and I would see a more comprehensive agreement between the two historical allies. I mean, Saudi Arabia and the U.S., especially with this visit to Saudi from the U.S. president.
So you think that the United States will reinforce its relation with the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia as its top ally in the Middle East or in the region?
I do think that this understanding is there now. It's not something that would be reinforced by this visit. No, I don't. The U.S. realizes the importance of Saudi in the region, and
it did exist in the past and still.
Yes, even during, and I want to say this, even during Obama's time. Obama, when he wanted to achieve something, he came and visited Saudi. It's not something that as I know some analysts would say that this relationships was affected heavily, and now we're fixing it, and it's a a reset or a reset to what happened in the past. But I do think that there are fundamentals between in the relationship between the Saudis and the U.S., and these fundamentals did not change a lot. Yes, the oil as a factor have lost some importance. The oil of the Middle East, the oil of the Gulf specifically, but the Saudis still represent the most important and capable state in this whole region. I mean, the Muslim and Arab world and the Middle East, and the U.S. knows that for a fact, and would love to continue working with the Saudis, despite even some of the rhetoric that we heard in the past from some of the U.S. voices. But when it comes to getting things done, the U.S. knows that it can only rely on the Saudis to do that.
That's great. When it comes to the Iranian expansion by spreading chaos, committing crimes against the humanity, for example, in some countries, Syria, Yemen, by Houthis, how do you see the future of these militias? And do you think that the United States will take an action against them in the near future, taking into consideration that the United States is concentrating on the priority of dealing with Al-Qaeda, or with ISIS and Daesh in Iraq and Syria?
If the U.S. doesn't take this into consideration and rearrange its threat list in the region, this will hunt the U.S. back. These militias are a threat not only to the Gulf or Saudi interests in the region, but even for the U.S. interests in the region. It's something that the U.S. should treat very seriously, and know that what harms its allies in the region, specifically the Gulf states, eventually harms the U.S. at the end. And I think part of these upcoming meetings is to find a common ground between the Arab Muslim world, represented and headed by Saudi, and the U.S. administration.
That's great. When it comes to Mr. Hisham, extremism and terrorism represented by Al-Qaeda, can we consider the Houthis as dangerous as Al-Qaeda or extremism?
I mean, you could consider Houthi more dangerous than Al-Qaeda and ISIS. Yes, for a simple reason.
Okay.
Houthi is sponsored by a nation state that have the capabilities of a nation state, and in a state that have these large oil resources, and that it uses its wealth to support Al-Houthi and other groups in the region. You cannot compare this to Al-Qaeda and ISIS that have no clear supporter, a state supporter. And usually states are more, I mean, the basic international relations rule is that states are more powerful than non-state actors or militias. That's when you have a funder such as an Iran supporting Al-Houthi, you can easily cite and pick and know that Al-Houthi can cause more threat to the region and destabilize the region compared to ISIL or ISIS or Al-Qaeda or even Al-Qaeda.
So it's more dangerous.
Yes, yes, for Russian reasons. I mean, look at groups that are supported in Syria and Lebanon from Iran. These groups are more organized and more capable and inflicting harm on their enemies than groups that are driven by ideology and weak support. I mean, ISIS is much weaker. I mean, if you compare ISIS, for instance, to certain groups in Lebanon or Syria, without mentioning these groups, ISIS is much weaker than these groups, and it's easier to infiltrate even. And Bashar al-Assad regime have infiltrated Daesh several times and have used them to fight other opposition groups in Syria. Thus, it's a well-known fact that non-state actors that are supported by states, by foreign states and their countries, more powerful than other groups.
And more dangerous.
Yes.
Mr. Hisham, the former U.S. Ambassador Gerald Feuerstein stressed 3 goals for the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia in Yemen. First is the need to preserve legitimate Yemeni government, and second is to prevent further Houthi and Iranian expansion, while the third goal is to protect the Saudi-Yemen border. Your comments, and to what extent the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia actually achieve these goals?
The Saudis are trying to improve their performance in all of these groups. I think the Saudis have achieved the safety of their borders to a great extent. They have pushed the Houthi further away from their borders. However, the Saudis want, and they wouldn't see this as a resolution, just to push the Houthi away from their borders, because if you do not end this rebellion now, it will come back. We can know this by what happened in 2009 when we kept this unfinished. It became worse later on. So the Houthi threat needs to be ended as soon as possible and as firm as possible. When I say the Houthi threat needs to be Houthi as an armed group, but not as a political group. If the Houthi wants to engage in the political process, the Saudis would assist greatly in that.
That's great. What about the warning that Yemen could turn into another Lebanon if the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia didn't intervene?
Just imagine. I mean, you would have 10 groups. What happened in Hadramaut was a prime example. Without the Saudis intervening and trying to coordinate between these groups, things would. Do
you think that we would have a copy of Hezbollah?
You would have copies, different copies, several copies actually. Yemen is much worse. I mean, the situation in Yemen is much worse, and the population is more armed than any other Arab states. Without the Saudi coordination and intervention between between different political parties and political groups and tribes and affiliations, things could be much worse than what we're having right now.
There has been a talk recently about Al Hudaydah port city to be supervised and under the control of the international community. How do you perceive this?
I mean, these details should be agreed upon. The Saudis do not mind an international intervention if this international intervention seeks to assist and help the legitimate government in Yemen. Saudis would accept any initiative, any international initiative. However, the Saudis do not want to see initiatives that would threaten their borders and would keep would delay the recovery of Yemen. The Saudis would like to see an international actions that could help Yemen and end this conflict as soon as possible with the least of harm to the Yemeni people.
That's great. Talking about the United States role in maintaining stability and security, and also the new U.S. administration, Mr. Hisham. Do you think that the United States will be involved in the future when it comes to Al-Houthis also?
No one can tell until now. What I hope to see is a very clear U.S. policy towards the region. This is unclear until now, and we're waiting for next week to see what results that we could have. It's unclear that there is a very good intent to be involved in a good way by the U.S. In the region. However, such plans are not detailed in a way that would let me comment very clearly on this. The U.S. wants their traditional allies to be strong and to be safe, and there are great intents and initiatives by the U.S. to do that. However, these are just until now thoughts and speeches, but it's unclear how would the U.S. achieve that.
We cannot predict.
We cannot predict yes, we do have signals. We do have positive indicators and signals. The Prince Mohammed bin Salman's visit to the U.S. is a prime example, and meeting with President Trump. However, having a policy that is clear and laid out in very clear manner is something that the U.S. presidency and this national security team surrounding President Trump would have to do. It's not something that the Saudis could do. The Saudis did what they can do, and they tried to communicate the real picture to the Americans, and we have to wait and see.
That's great. In your opinion, Mr. Hisham, do you think that we are going to see the role of Iran in some countries like Syria, for example, shrinking in the future and reflected positively in Yemen and other regions, Arab countries?
Until now, this is not happening. Until now, with this Russian intervention, this is not happening. Iran's role did not change a lot, whether in Syria or in Yemen. That's why I keep insisting that the international community should have a very clear and a firm approach and actions towards Iran. Other than that, things will escalate to a worse condition, and we would have to suffer the consequences. I mean, the region as a whole, and even our Western allies would be faced with this great immigration movement and with problems that.
So you don't think that the role of Iran would be shrinking?
I do think that it should shrink if things go into if things went as expected. However, until now there is no clear plan. How would this role be shrinked by the U.S.? I expect to see this laid out clearly. It's not clear until now. I mean, I would like to see it. I mean, in the near future.
And do you think that the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia is going to exert more efforts in convincing the United States of also the dangerous role of Iran in the region in this summit?
One of the main goals of this summit is to do that. Basically, is to bring these different views into an agreement and having a common ground with the U.S. and to make this as a win-win situation for everybody.
That's great. Mr. Hisham Al-Ghannam, the political analyst, I cannot but thank you very much for the detailed information and vigorous background on the Houthis' destructive role in Yemen. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Glad to be here.
Thank you, Mr. Hisham. Dear viewers, we've reached the end of this episode. We cannot but thank you very much for watching, and special thanks for Mohammed Al-Qasim, Mohammed Al-Amshi, Yazid Al-Husseini, and Fawaz Arsayis for lighting, and the director of this program, Turki Al Houthi. Until we meet again, have a good and pleasant time. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.